The words echoed in my mind, a soft hiss like static through a blown speaker. You understand, of course, that this changes everything. It wasn't a question. It was a pronouncement, delivered with the same casual finality as ordering takeout. My mother's voice, usually laced with a performative sweetness that barely masked her judgment, had a brittle edge tonight. I remember the cool, slick feel of the leather armchair beneath my hands, the faint scent of lemon polish in the air. Outside, the city lights blurred into streaks of indifferent color. My world, a meticulously constructed facade of filial duty and quiet accommodation, had just crumbled into dust. My normal was a carefully curated existence, a tightrope walk over a chasm of expectation. For years, I'd been the dutiful child, the one who always picked up the phone, the one who never caused a fuss, the one who readily assumed the burdens others shirked. It was a role I'd inherited, or perhaps cultivated, out of a deep-seated need for approval that had never been truly satisfied. My parents, particularly my mother, operated on a system of conditional love, a transactional arrangement where emotional currency was dispensed only in exchange for obedience and perceived success. My father, a quieter force, was a passive observer, his silence a form of tacit agreement, a shield from my mother's more overt manipulations. Their world was one of curated appearances, of maintaining a pristine image for the outside world, and I, for a long time, was a willing prop in their elaborate play. There were so many moments, little shards of glass I'd collected over the years, that should have warned me. Like the time I'd finally achieved a significant career milestone, a promotion I'd worked tirelessly for. Instead of a simple congratulations, my mother's first words were, "That's wonderful, dear, but are you sure you can handle the increased workload? You've always been a bit sensitive." It wasn't concern, it was a subtle undermining, a perpetual casting of doubt on my capabilities, designed to keep me tethered, dependent. Or the summer I'd wanted to take a solo trip abroad, a chance to finally breathe and forge my own identity. The guilt trip that followed was epic. Flights were unnecessary expenses, and my safety was paramount, a flimsy excuse to maintain control. "We just worry," she'd say, her voice dripping with manufactured maternal anguish, while her eyes scanned my bank account statements she'd somehow acquired. The unspoken message was always clear: your life is not your own, it is an extension of ours, a reflection of our choices and our sacrifices. I swallowed it all, the constant criticism, the passive aggression, the subtle financial strings they always managed to maintain, even as I built a life for myself. The night it all came crashing down was a Tuesday. Rain lashed against the large bay window of their impeccably furnished living room. I'd been called over for a family discussion, a euphemism they often used when one of them had a decree to issue. My mother sat on the velvet sofa, her posture rigid, a cup of Earl Grey cooling beside her. My father was in his usual armchair, his newspaper folded neatly on his lap. The air felt thick, charged with an unspoken tension. I'd braced myself, anticipating some new directive, some minor imposition disguised as a parental concern. "We've been discussing your financial situation," my mother began, her tone carefully neutral, as if discussing the weather. My stomach tightened. I'd managed to become financially independent years ago, a point of pride and a hard-won victory. "I thought we were past this. You know how much we've always supported you. From your education to your first car, even helping with your apartment deposit." She paused, letting the weight of these past favors settle. I nodded, waiting for the inevitable, but... "Well," she continued, her gaze unwavering, "your father and I have decided that, given your current stability, it's time we made some adjustments." My father cleared his throat, a small, almost imperceptible sound. "We feel we've done our part. And frankly, the market is rather unpredictable right now. We need to secure our own future." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Adjustments? What adjustments? What do you mean?" I managed, my voice thinner than I'd intended. Her smile was tight, a mere twitch of her lips. "It's simple, really. We're going to be reclaiming the funds. The ones we've allocated for you." The words hit me like a physical blow. They weren't talking about a loan. They were talking about their money, the money they'd always framed as gifts, but which I now realized had been strategically placed investments, leverage they held over me. I thought back to the initial deposit on my apartment, the loan for my master's degree, the down payment on my first car, all meticulously documented, not as gifts, but as advances against a future inheritance. I'd an Ver questioned it, blinded by the idea of their generosity. Now, I saw the cold, calculating foresight behind it. You can't do that, I stammered, the carefully constructed walls of my composure beginning to crack. That money, it helped me build my life. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. The performative sweetness evaporated, replaced by a chilling pragmatism. And we are simply adjusting our own financial strategy. It's our money, after all. And you've had ample time to establish yourself. She gestured with her teacup, the delicate china rattling slightly. Think of it as a final lesson in self-reliance. You're an adult now. You don't need our crutches anymore. The arrogance, the sheer entitlement, was breathtaking. They hadn't just decided to withdraw support, they were effectively retracting their investment, seizing back the capital they'd used to control me, and framing it as a lesson. A lesson in what? In their ability to wield power? In the transactional nature of their love? The silence that followed was deafening. The rain seemed to intensify outside, a relentless drumming against the glass. My father finally looked up from his newspaper, his expression unreadable, but his lack of protest spoke volumes. He was complicit. He was allowing this. I looked at my mother, her face a mask of calm certainty, and something inside me snapped. It wasn't a violent break, not a sudden rage. It was a quiet, internal severing. The years of swallowed insults, of suppressed resentments, of silent endurance, coalesced into a single, cold point of clarity. I stood up slowly. My hands, which had been clenched in my lap, uncurled. I walked to the side table where my briefcase sat. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't plead. I simply opened it. I see, I said, my voice even, devoid of emotion. My mother watched me, a flicker of something, impatience, in her eyes. She probably expected tears, or an outburst, something she could mold and manipulate. Instead, I pulled out a single document, a thick envelope containing copies of every single agreement, every promissory note, every advance they had ever given me, along with my own meticulous records of repayment and accrued interest. I'd kept them, not out of suspicion, but out of a deep-seated need for order and a subconscious recognition that their generosity was always conditional. I placed the envelope on the coffee table between us. You mentioned your financial strategy needs adjusting, I said, my gaze fixed on the envelope. And that the market is unpredictable. You're absolutely right. I looked directly at my mother, my expression unyielding. You've also stated that these funds were allocated for me. What you seem to have forgotten is that these were structured as loans, with explicit repayment clauses and, in some cases, interest. The contributions to my apartment deposit, my car, my education, they weren't gifts. They were secured against a future inheritance, an inheritance that was contingent on your continued approval and support, as per the terms outlined in these documents. My mother's composure faltered. Her eyes flickered to the envelope, then back to my face, a hint of confusion warring with dawning realization. According to my calculations, I continued, my voice gaining a quiet authority, the outstanding principal, plus accrued interest over the years, far exceeds the initial amounts you allocated. In essence, you don't reclaim these funds. You owe me a significant sum. My father finally stirred, his newspaper rustling. His head snapped up, his eyes wide, searching my face. The calm, placid observer was gone, replaced by a man who suddenly understood the implications of his wife's casual pronouncement. My mother's face drained of color. The carefully constructed mask of control cracked, revealing a flicker of raw panic. Her breath hitched. That's preposterous. We never intended. Intentions are irrelevant when contracts are involved, I interrupted, my tone still level. And these documents are quite clear. You've also always prided yourselves on your financial acumen, on being shrewd investors. I'm simply ensuring all parties are held to their contractual obligations. I picked up my briefcase. I've had the contracts reviewed by my lawyer. He's prepared the necessary paperwork to formalize this. You'll receive official notification within the week. I paused at the doorway, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. Enjoy your newfound self-reliance, I added, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. I walked out of their house and into the rain. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. The weight that had pressed down on me for years lifted, replaced by a strange, cold calm. The aftermath was a symphony of controlled chaos. My mother's frantic text messages began almost immediately. This is an outrage. You're destroying this family. How could you be so ungrateful? My father sent a single, terse message, we need to talk. But I didn't respond. I'd already said what needed to be said. Then came the flying monkeys. My aunt, a woman who'd always been my mother's echo, called, her voice shrill with manufactured indignation. Your mother is devastated. How could you do this to them? My mother's sister, who lived overseas, sent a passive-aggressive email about respect for elders and the natural order of things. They were all so quick to defend my parents, so ready to believe their narrative of the ungrateful, unfeeling child. They didn't see the years of manipulation, the subtle control, the constant erosion of my self-worth. They only saw the immediate consequence, the perceived financial loss. My mother, meanwhile, began a campaign of public defamation, painting me as a ruthless opportunist, a cold-hearted schemer who had deliberately engineered their financial downfall. She hinted at my selfishness, my lack of empathy, all the while conveniently forgetting the years she'd spent chipping away at my own. The community, a small, insular circle of acquaintances who thrived on gossip, largely took her side. Her carefully cultivated image of the loving, martyred mother was far more compelling than the truth of her controlling nature. But the truth, in this case, was backed by irrefutable legal documentation. My lawyer was efficient. The contracts were solid. The loans were precisely as I described them. My parents, accustomed to operating in a world of veiled threats and implied obligations, were utterly unprepared for the cold, hard reality of legal precedent. Their initial shock morphed into a desperate attempt to negotiate, to find a way out of the financial hole they had dug for themselves. They tried to leverage family reputation, threatening to disown me entirely. But the leverage was gone. They had burned their bridges, and I held the matches. The legal proceedings were swift. The settlements were finalized. The money they had intended to keep for themselves, the money they had used as a weapon against me, was legally obligated to be repaid. It wasn't a grand victory march, no cheering crowds or public accolades. It was a quiet, methodical execution. The satisfaction came not from their suffering, but from the absolute dismantling of their manipulative power. The smugness that had characterized my mother's every interaction with me was replaced by a stunned silence. My father, usually so passive, looked hollowed out, the weight of his complicity finally crushing him. My mother's message, the one that had marked the turning point, had been a declaration of war. I had simply responded with a meticulously planned counteroffensive. There was no dramatic confrontation, no cathartic outburst. Just the cold, clean click of legal documents sealing their fate. They had played their game, and I, for years, had been a pawn. But I had learned the rules, and when the time was right, I had changed the board entirely. The silence that followed their frantic attempts to regain control was deafening, and it was the most profound form of justice I could have imagined. They had wanted me to be self-reliant. They got it. And in the process, they discovered the true cost of treating their child as a financial asset, a tool for control, rather than a human being. Their world, so carefully constructed on a foundation of manipulation, crumbled under the weight of their own greed. And mine, finally free, began to rebuild, on solid ground, without the specter of their conditional love hanging over me.